Hello everybody, welcome back to another video with Lim Reviews. Now today we have here a very interesting comparison. We have the Redmi 10 that was just recently announced here on the left, and we have the fight contender, the Redmi Note 10 that was launched a couple of months back on the right. So just to make sure you guys are clear, this guy right here is the Redmi 10, this is the Redmi Note 10. Alright, so we're just going to jump into this comparison of fight, if you want to think about it that way, very quickly. First up, let's talk about the pricing here. Now, both devices here are around RM 650 ringgit here in Malaysia, and if you're from other regions in the world, that is approximately 150 US dollars for the spec of 4 gigabytes of RAM and 64 gigabytes of internal memory. Now, obviously, this memory and specs can go up, but again, depending on your region, that might differ. Alright, so in terms of pricing, you can already know that both are actually very similar between the Redmi 10 as well as the Redmi Note 10. So I have a lot of people asking me like, which device should I buy? Should I go with the Redmi 10 or should I go with the Redmi Note 10? And I hope this video will help you out. Let's go. Alright, so first up, let's talk a little bit about design right here. You can see that the design here looks quite similar but different in a way. So on the Redmi 10 right here, we have this really smooth back panel. It is matte here, and I love matte, just so you know. And we do have a slight camera cutout on the top right corner. It has a slight bump, but not a big deal. Overall, silver sides here, very nicely done. This is what you can get on the Redmi 10. Now moving on to the Redmi Note 10. This is actually a glossy back panel. It does capture quite a fair bit of fingerprints, but I have my device here in this beautiful lava green colorway. Look at how it just shines, guys. It looks very nice here. In terms of the camera cutout, it is slightly smaller than the one on the Redmi 10, but this is the kind of design you can expect here. It's actually quite slim as well. If you actually hold it side by side, you actually notice that the Redmi Note 10 right here is actually slimmer than the Redmi 10, and both devices have the same amount of battery, that is 5000 mAh. So very interesting stuff right there. Slightly slimmer on the Redmi Note 10, whereas it's a bit thicker on the Redmi 10. So this is the design that you can see for both devices. I think design is quite subjective here. While I do like the fact that this has a matte back right here, but I love this colorway and I love that it's much more slimmer on the Redmi Note 10. Alright, moving on, we're going to go into a very important point here, and that is actually the displays at the front. Now, this is the part where you must really take note because it is a very crucial difference here. Now, on the Redmi 10 right here, we have an LCD display. It's running at 1080p and has 90Hz refresh rate. So it's somewhat quite smooth here on the Redmi 10, but the only downside here is that this LCD display that we have here is one of the poorer kind of displays that is actually provided by Redmi. What I mean by that is that it is very dim and it's not bright at all, especially when you're outdoors. Even when you're indoors, it's just not bright enough. So that's one thing I want to comment about the Redmi 10. Now, on the other hand, this Redmi Note 10 here has a beautiful AMOLED display. However, it doesn't come with a high refresh rate display. It is only 60 Hz, just like your regular old displays. So on one hand here, we have an LCD panel that is slightly higher in terms of refresh rate, 90 Hz, but this one here, we get much better colors, absolutely great contrast levels, and it's perfect for watching videos, you know, browsing your social media and all that. Is just so much nicer on the Redmi Note 10 right here. So again, quick question, guys. Do you prefer an AMOLED display, or would you go for a higher refresh rate but ignore all the stuff that you can enjoy on an AMOLED panel? Let me know down below. So just to give you a quick comparison, look at this. When we just shift the device from side to side, you can see here that naturally it loses a lot of its viewing angles on the Redmi 10. In fact, when you just go into Instagram right here, you can see that the colors are also very different. And yeah, so it is taking quite a while to load here, but the colors are actually quite different here. It's much more vibrant, much more contrast on the Redmi Note 10 here. Again, if you ask me, my answer would be I'll have to take the AMOLED panel on the Redmi Note 10 because it's just so much better, guys. I can forego the 90 Hz just for this kind of colors, contrast levels. Is great, guys. One more tiny thing you need to note here is that although this Redmi 10 usually is smaller than the Note series, but in this case, the Redmi 10 is slightly larger than the Redmi Note 10. So take a look at this. This is actually 6.5 inches in terms of its display, whereas this guy, the Redmi Note 10, is only 6.43 inches. So it's slightly smaller, just so you guys know. All right, now let's move on to the next point and let's talk a little bit about performance. Now, we have very different processors here. On the left here, the Redmi 10 here comes with the Helio G88 processor, and it's quite a decent processor for the price it's asking. I mean, it's very entry level. Whereas on the Redmi Note 10 right here, we have the Snapdragon 678. Now, let's move on in terms of the benchmark scores, guys. So I did a benchmark for both devices right here, and I'm going to show you a quick result very quickly on your screens. And you can see just in terms of single core and multi-core scores, the Redmi Note 10 is actually much more powerful than the Redmi 10. In terms of how much, I would say that in terms of single core score, you can see that the results about 52% higher, whereas on the multi-core score is about 18% higher. So in just day-by-day usage, guys, very quickly, when I use both devices, I actually feel that it's much smoother on the Redmi Note 10 that I have here, the one on the right. So let me just show you guys very quickly right here. I'm going to close all the apps on both devices, and we're just going to launch apps very quickly, see who does it first. So you're going to go with camera right here, Redmi Note 10, going to get out from there. You're going to go Facebook, Redmi Note 10 again. Redmi 10 is still waiting, and there you go. Okay, get out from there again. We're going to go into Instagram, Redmi Note 10, guys. So you can see here in terms of launch speeds and of apps, it is much more faster on the Redmi Note 10, guys. So again, in terms of performance of day-to-day use, I really appreciate the ones on the Redmi Note 10 right here, much better than the one on the Redmi 10. Alright, so now let's move on to something quite interesting as well. Let's talk about internal memory and the RAM. Now, RAM-wise, I don't have much to comment about here, but in terms of internal memory, this is also quite a big difference here. The one on the Redmi Note 10 here is using eMMC, whereas the one on the Redmi Note 10 here is using UFS 2.2. Now, in terms of writing speeds and all that, this is about 2 times faster than this guy right here. So again, it's a knock out of the park. Alright, now let's move on to the next point. We're done with performance. Of course, gaming-wise, just a quick one right here. It also games slightly better on the Redmi Note 10. Right, let's move on to haptics, guys. Haptics is also very, very important to me in my daily use of smartphones right here. So we're going to start off with the Redmi 10 on the left right here. I'm just going to go into like my settings right here, get the keyboard activated and try and type on the keyboard right here. So the Redmi 10 right here has very, very poor haptics. And what I mean by that is like it's really at the bottom of the haptics goodness table. So whenever you press it, it's a very subtle kind of vibration. You feel the kind of the zzz, zzz. It's a bit tardy as well, not as responsive. It's very, very poor in terms of haptics right there. Now we're going to check out the one on the Redmi Note 10. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go into settings, go into here, and just type on here. This is so much better, guys. The vibrations here, the haptics is the zzz, 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 kind of very responsive. Again, I know it's hard to explain this over the camera across the screen, but this is short and sharp. Now, obviously, it is not as good as the X-axis or Z-axis kind of haptics that you get on more premium devices, but this one is really good. Again, if you have the chance to test it out, you should definitely check it out because it's a huge difference and it makes a lot of difference to the overall user experience. Done with that, now let's move on to the next point and talk a little bit about the cameras. So in terms of cameras, guys, we do have both actually have quad camera setups. In terms of numbers alone, the only difference between both these guys here are the main sensor. So on the Redmi 10, we have a 50 megapixel main sensor, whereas on the Redmi Note 10, it has a 48 megapixel main sensor. The ultra wide is the same, the macro and the depth lens is also the same. They're both like 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel depth and 2 megapixel macro. Yeah, just trying to get it out of my memory, but it's the same for the 3 other lenses. It's only the 2 main lenses that are different. So again, let me just show you a quick comparison in terms of image quality, because these days, to be honest, image quality is sometimes a personal preference kind of thing. Some people prefer their stuff to be like more saturated. Some people prefer it to be like more natural, true to life. So here's a quick comparison for you guys to judge. In my opinion, I think for the price, both cameras actually did a fair job here. They're both decent cameras in the day and at night. I won't complain too much here, but I'll leave the final decision to you guys. But just to let you guys know, the main difference is in the main sensors right there. Alright, now let's move on to the next point here and let's talk a little bit about the speakers. The Redmi 10 absolutely takes the cake for this one. It is a very strong and very solid speaker on the Redmi 10. Now, down to the final point. I hope you are still with me and I hope I'm not going too fast. So, final point here, batteries. So we have 5000 mAh in both devices right here, but what's really different is the charging speeds. So on this Redmi 10 right here, we have 18-watt fast charge support. Sounds okay, but on the Redmi Note 10, don't forget we have 33-watt fast charge and it's able to do 50% in just 25 minutes. So very much faster on the Redmi Note 10 as well to charge up the same amount of battery in the back. So those are the differences between the Redmi 10 and the Redmi Note 10. Again, my conclusion here is pretty straightforward. Both devices are priced very similarly, if not the Redmi Note 10 might be just a little bit more expensive, I think about 50 ringgit, and that's about 10 US dollars. Very, very close in terms of pricing. But if I were to choose one, absolutely have to go with the Redmi Note 10. Comes with better display, comes with a better processor, better haptics, camera-wise is pretty similar, better charging speeds for the battery at the back. Guys, I think it's pretty clear cut. I will go for the Redmi Note 10, but please tell me otherwise if you might go with the Redmi 10. Again, both devices are great value right here, but I hope this video can help you out in terms of which is actually providing you the best value and the best experience that you can get from a budget phone today. Alright guys, that's it for this video. I hope you've learned something from this video. If you support the channel, please provide a like or a sub. That would really help out the channel, and I hope to see all of you in the next video. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Stay safe everybody. Bye.